And it's all powered by the Vincent Financial Group. Coming up, finding confidence regardless of the size. And how about an additional 15% of retirement income in about 60 seconds? 770-741-0120, RetireATLradio.com. My name is Mark Owens. Aaron spending time with the family this weekend. Matt Decker, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Newly back from the beach, little summer vacation action. And man, I got to tell you, every time I come back from the beach and you hit that Atlanta traffic, you just think, did I make the right decision? Should I have just stayed? Should I just stayed at the beach?
Just north of Macon, a little south of McDonough, you hit that phantom traffic.
That's exactly where it happened.
There's no accident. There's no stall. There's no construction.
But we're stopping.
We are completely gridlocked.
We're stopping.
At like 2 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. Mm-hmm. Make it make sense.
That's exactly when we rolled through. 2 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. We're stopping every 15 minutes, and I'm just thinking to myself, man, there's a huge accident up there. No, there wasn't.
There have been studies about that traffic in McDonough. What causes it? It doesn't matter 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, 7 days a week.
Random bouts of sheer panic. I don't know.
And you've still got a little sand in your car.
Yep.
A nice little burn.
We had the dog with us. There's hair everywhere.
Oh, I mean, but like you just lived your best vacation life.
Yeah.
And here you are back in Atlanta.
Exactly.
Going, yeah, I could do this now, couldn't I? I could drive to the median and go right back down to Hilton Head.
Let's just turn around. Yeah, Hilton Head.
Has that been like a family spot for you?
You know, I think it might start to be. We've been there a couple times. My youngest son, his birthday is July 5th. And so we've done a few, summer birthday vacation combo trips. Mm-hmm. And the last one that we did in Hilton Head was over July 4th, and we celebrated his birthday. And so decided to give it another shot. And man, we just had a wonderful time. But I'm glad to be back. I miss my friends, my family that's up here. But
I love that. We were at the lake for about a week. I have a long weekend, and it's one of those same things. It's like we're on the boat, and I'm going, honey, we could afford that $1.6 million lake house, right? We could move some stuff around. This could happen. Yeah. But it's fun to play fantasy though. But it is fun to sit there and dream and say, work hard, make the right moves. Mm-hmm. One day we're going to get that lake house.
That's right.
One day, we'll leave our stuff at the beach because we're coming back to our house. Mm-hmm. One day. Let's help you get there with the help of the Vincent Financial Group. 770-741-0120 or RetireATLradio.com. Recently, latest inflation numbers came out, down 3%. Core CPI, 3.3%. Is the Fed going to lower interest rates? They've been saying at the beginning of the year, 5 interest rate cuts this year. Maybe 1 now if we're lucky. So what's your take when you hear this? Potentially a rate cut in September, interest rates or inflation's dropping just a little bit. You read all this, Matt Decker, and what do you read?
Yeah, I think when we talk about inflation, it's important to put things into perspective. And I guess I should say from the outset, I have no idea what the Fed's going to do. Mm-hmm. They've basically said everything at this point. If you look over the last year, they're going to cut, they're going to have raises. They've flip-flopped so many times. I have no idea what they're going to do, and anybody who says that they know what the Fed's going to do, they don't know. So let's just start there. But I do think the inflation numbers are especially interesting because most people have no idea how the inflation numbers are actually calculated, number one. Mm-hmm. And number two, I don't hear any discussions about how the inflation calculation has changed over time. So maybe we should just start there because we throw out numbers. You're listening to the radio. It's early. We're talking 3%, 7%. What's the inflation number? But inflation hasn't always been measured the same way. So can I get on a soapbox for just a second?
Please do. Okay. Yes, sir.
So before 1983, basically for all of history measuring inflation up to 1983, the idea was to package together a basket of goods. So, Mark, I know you like steak. Mm-hmm. I like steak. Mm-hmm. If that was a staple in your diet, well, then you're going to price out, ribeyes for the family of 5, and that's in your basket of goods.
Right.
You got your gasoline purchases in the basket of goods, rice, so on and so forth. Homeownership was in the basket of goods. And how they measured inflation was by saying, how much more do you need to spend this year or month over month or year over year to maintain your standard of living, which means if you like to eat steak, mm-hmm. you're going to keep eating steak. If you have a truck that guzzles gas, you're going to keep that truck
So
that
it's
guzzles
not
gas.
getting better steak. It's not getting the best gas. It's
just
maintaining. Okay.
Maintaining your standard of living. Okay, well, in 1982, at the end of 1982, beginning of 1983, they made a change in how they measure inflation. It was the first major change that they made. And what they said was, we have to find a way to lower our CPI numbers because interest rates are so high.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember the 1980s, you remember interest rates were going crazy. In fact, this is an aside. About 10 years ago, I saw my parents' first mortgage statement payoff. They bought this home back in like 1982 or something like that. And I think they had a 13% interest rate.
Wow.
They bought like a $150,000 house and total lifetime payments was going to be like $600,000, right? And I don't know how I saw this. I think it was in maybe their fireproof safe or something. And I just pulled it out and I thought, oh my gosh, this is outrageous. Okay, so interest rates were going crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And when home prices were factored into the CPI calculation, it took into account mortgage rates. And so in the 80s, mortgage rates spike, and all of a sudden the CPI number spikes along with it. Now, that's a huge problem. Why is that a huge problem? It's a huge problem because what drives the annual increases to your Social Security payment?
Inflation?
CPI. CPIW. So the CPI calculation.
By the way, I'm so happy I got that right. I don't know if you could see the joy on my face. Like I really felt like I was being quizzed there. I was like,
you were being quizzed.
Oh, thank God.
You
All right,
were being quizzed.
sorry.
You passed the test. You passed the test. Most people don't know that, although I do think a lot of people taking Social Security, they recognize that the inflation numbers are what's going to drive their pay increases on Social Security. Well, that's a huge problem. A huge problem. We've talked on the show before, Mark, about how Social Security is set to run out of its trust fund reserves in, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, depends on who you listen to.
Yeah.
Well, they knew this was a problem 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, because they thought we have a problem. Home prices are going up. Mortgage rates are going up. That's driving up our CPI number. So what they did is they said, we're not going to factor in home ownership prices into inflation numbers. We're going to exchange it with the equivalent of being a renter. So now they've taken out a rising interest rate environment in the CPI number. That was 1983. And I have some numbers for you. In December of 82, 1/4 of the CPI number was driven by home prices.
Okay.
In January of 83, 1 month later, only 13.5% of the CPI number was driven by home prices. That's the change that they made. It knocks down the CPI number, which knocks down the annual increase in Social Security. Okay, so that's 1983.
Okay.
In the early 90s, they made another change. We're only going to talk about a few changes. They've made several. These are the two big ones that I think most people can understand, and really they feel the impact. Not only do they understand it, but they see it. We talked about maintaining your standard of living. If you like to buy steak, it's in the basket of goods. The CPI number assumed you were going to keep buying steak. In 1990, early 1990s, they said, we have a problem. Inflation's still too high. It's still driving the cost of our Social Security increases too quickly. It's increasing the payment too quickly. We can't afford it. So now we're going to assume that if steak gets expensive, you're going to switch your steak out for a cheap burger. And they did that with tons of goods. So it's basically called substitution. If something gets expensive, it's out of the basket of goods and it's replaced with something that's cheaper. Now that's really important because now the CPI number is not a number of maintaining your standard of living.
You've replaced
it. You've substituted. Now your standard of living is lower because you're not eating steak anymore. You're eating cheap burgers. You're not eating pasta, you're eating rice. So I guess pasta and rice are both pretty cheap. But what would you replace rice with?
Ramen noodles.
Ramen noodles. Well, I guess you wouldn't replace rice with ramen noodles, but but I think you get the idea. You're switching to cheaper substitutes. Okay, so in the early 90s, and in fact, Newt Gingrich actually was in Kennesaw, Georgia, when this was all happening in like 95, 96 in a town hall meeting. And he was talking about this very issue right here. The CPI number is too high. We need to make changes to lower it because we can't afford these increased payments to Social Security. That's here, local, Kennesaw, Georgia.
Love it.
So now the inflation number is not here's what you need to pay to maintain your standard of living. It's here's the annual cost to be alive. Here's your cost increased to just be alive, right? If you need 2,000 calories a day, we don't care if those are high quality calories or low quality calories. You just need 2,000 calories.
Yeah.
And so to be alive, the inflation number comes out at 3%. Okay, it's not 3% to live the way you were living last month. It's just 3% to be here, to live.
Fascinating.
So pretty depressing in a way.
Yeah.
And so when, talking to the audience here, you all know that you're being lied to. I know it. You know it. You can feel it when you go to the grocery store
100%.
because you're not thinking, or maybe you're hearing it's only 3% more expensive, but you're not going in and substituting out all the things that you normally buy because we're all creatures of habit, right? My family has 10 to 12 meals that we make pretty much anytime we have dinner because it's just easy, right? We have our process. We know what to do. Everybody's firing on all cylinders. We're buying the same stuff. Well, it's way more expensive than a 3% increase because we're not substituting our burger for ramen. We're still eating burgers.
That's right.
Because we know how to make burgers. My kids won't eat ramen. Okay. So when you hear the inflation numbers, you just need to know that out of the gate, you're being lied to. Because that number does not represent you maintaining your standard of living. It represents you just being here, consuming the calories that you consumed last month. And now it's 3% more expensive to just be breathing the air and living in your house and eating your 2,000 calories.
Right. So then why all the arguments, why all the debates about Jerome Powell and the Fed wanting to get the inflation down to 2% before they'll do some interest rate cuts? If pretty much the CPI means nothing, then why do we keep seeing this magic number of 2%, 2%, 2%, and then we'll start talking about interest rate cuts?
Right. So there's a huge difference between the cost to maintain your lifestyle, which is probably more between the 7 to 12% range. So the real, if you were to go back and measure inflation the way they did in 1982, your numbers would be north of 7%.
Okay.
Much higher than 7%. They'd be in the 10% range. If you measured inflation the way we used to before we took out home prices, mortgage prices, and switched out our fixed basket of goods for this just substitutionary model. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that matters because they do still want to get the CPI lowered because the CPI still drives and is still related to the yearly pay increases paid out to Social Security members, people drawing on Social Security. And so this is always going to be a battle. This is always going to continue in the direction of changing the inflation numbers so that the government doesn't have to pay as large of a yearly increase on their entitlement programs because there's no one, whether you're red or blue or yellow or white or green, whatever.
How many different parties are
I'm
there?
not sure how many parties there are, but I know that there's no one that's going to come out and vote to start cutting Social Security.
Right.
They're not going to do that.
Well, that's the one thing that both Biden and Trump came out and said.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're both going to try. They're not going to let it go away.
They're not going to let it go.
No plans have been offered, but they're talking about
the
it.
The plan is to reduce how the CPI is calculated, is to change, rather, how the CPI is calculated so that they can show a lower inflationary number regardless of whether it's accurate or not. That doesn't matter. It's already not accurate. It's already not accurate. But if they can make it smaller by changing the way they do the math, they can drive annual increases to Social Security down. And that's what they need.
So if I'm understanding you correct, and we talk about inflation, CPI almost every week here on RetireATL, the CPI, the inflation number, is less about the steak that we eat and the steak we put in our basket and more about Social Security.
Absolutely. It's a political number that drives most of the entitlement programs.
fascinating. 770-741-0120. Again, 770-741-0120. Matthew Decker, Aaron Vincent, they want to help you maintain your life, maintain your quality of life so you can continue to enjoy those steaks with your family, go on the nice trips, regardless of what this inflation, what the CPI number is. 770-741-0120. Take advantage of that retirement roadmap. They want to sit down with you and customize a plan. They will give you this plan, let you walk away with it, or maybe you just need a second set of eyes. You can always get more when you visit RetireATLradio.com. All right, to continue that conversation about the inflation and the interest rates, there are rumors there could be a rate cut coming in September. Some people see this as a political move. Obviously, an election year, because an interest rate cut would do great things for the Biden administration right now.
Yep.
When you hear that, what's your just initial gut reaction?
I think that they would do at this point just about anything. And by they, I just mean the establishment, those that are in power. It's not a left or a right thing. I think whoever's in power is going to do whatever they have to do to stay in power. And certainly interest rates and manipulating interest rates is a way for the current establishment to maybe look a little bit better than they otherwise would. So if they can get a rate reduction, they're going to be feeling pretty good about themselves. And I would anticipate them trying to do that. Whether it happens, I have no idea.
Right. Do you talk to a lot of the families that you serve? And we're talking a lot about budgets this weekend, talking about your income, maintaining your quality of life to and through retirement. Do you find that a lot of the families that you serve are having to adjust because of what we just talked about, having to go from steaks to burgers or having to go from the good gas to the lower quality gas just to be able to afford to fill the tank? Are you having to readjust plans because of the high cost of living?
I'm not sure that we're necessarily having to readjust plans, although occasionally that will happen. But more than readjusting the plan, and I guess when I hear you say plans, I'm thinking numbers and strategy and where dollars are invested. But what we do see happening a lot is just people are kind of self-regulating their own spending, right? And so if the plan is based on a $75,000 budget, we may not be meeting to adjust the number, but they are self-regulating themselves when they go to the grocery store. I mean, heck, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not retiring in the next 10 years, hopefully not the next 20 years. But even when I go to the grocery store, I'm still self-regulating what I'm buying because I see the prices, I see how much things cost, and there's something that I don't like about walking out of the store with a $600 grocery bill
and two bags of groceries.
Exactly. If I can make that $300, I'm going to. And it's not that I changed my plan; I just know what I'm used to paying.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't line up with what I'm used to, I think we're all again creatures of habit in buying the same things, but also we know about how much something should cost because we've been buying it forever.
Right.
And when it starts to change, we kind of naturally do start to adjust our behaviors a little bit. But that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I'm not eating as many steaks as I used to. Yeah. My standard of living is not higher than it was before. It's a little bit lower because I'm self-regulating my purchases. So yeah, we do see people kind of change their behaviors. And certainly we have been maybe taking some risk off the table. I know that's things we talk about. A lot of clients are coming to us looking for maybe some annuity as an alternative to some of their bond funds, but those would be some of the minor changes we would make.
I want to talk more about annuities coming up here in just a couple of minutes. A great opportunity for some guaranteed income in retirement. 770-741-0120, RetireATLradio.com to take advantage of that retirement roadmap from the team at the Vincent Financial Group. And Matthew Decker, Aaron Vincent, they want to be able to help everybody. But as Matthew often says, we're not miracle workers. So if you've done a good job saving for your retirement, take advantage of it. They want to give you that retirement roadmap to sit down with you, take a look at your plan. Maybe make adjustments as needed, and then they'll give you that plan to take with you. But it begins with a phone call, 770-741-0120. We had to do that last week. Monterey Mexican Restaurant in Smyrna, Georgia. We go there all the time. Me and my wife and my daughter, and we're just talking about inflation, how expensive everything is. The three of us, it's just three of us in the family, close to $100.
It's crazy.
Because you got to get the cheese dip.
Well, yeah.
Mama needs a margarita.
Did you get tableside guac?
No, it's Monterey. Don't do that. Come on now. It's a big scoop of it in there. We're not fancy we're paying fancy prices, but still.
Isn't that what it feels like?
And earlier this week, Gretchen was like, it was a long day. We're like, hey, do you want to go grab something to eat? I was like, no, let's save some money because we had some unexpected expenses come in. I mean, it's just like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, heck yeah, man, let's go get us some cheese dip and guacamole and a big Texas margarita. No, because everything is so much more expensive.
It's crazy.
So there was a fascinating study that said that adults who work with a financial advisor, they could end up with 15% more in retirement. There's an opportunity to have a 15% increase in their retirement income if they work with an advisor. So why do you think more people aren't taking advantage of that? Why do you think some people are almost a little, I don't know, intimidated to make the phone call and start putting these plans together?
I think that it's a great question. When it comes down to it, when you have somebody you trust, you're not scared to pick up the phone and make a call, ask some questions.
Sure.
Right? I think that we do have a trust problem, though, in the financial services industry. And I think that there's a bunch of reasons we have that problem. A lot of times people get talked over.
Yeah.
Advisors like to use jargon and, industry terms. And I don't get a clear picture, or I don't feel like we do a really good job. I don't mean me and our firm. I think we do a great job. I think the industry as a whole does a poor job of really sitting down and explaining to clients what they have, where the risks are, what changes they can make, and really laying everything out on the table, and then just sitting back and saying, but what do you think? A lot of times people will come into our office and they'll lay out a financial plan that they already have, maybe from their current advisor or a past advisor, and they'll say, I want a second opinion on this. And our first question is, okay, great, happy to do that. What do you like about the plan that you have? And most of the time, people say, I have no idea what my plan says. I don't know. I know that I have this big packet, and apparently it says I'm okay, but I actually don't know what it says. So I don't know what I like about it. So then the follow-up question is, okay, well, is there anything you don't like about the plan? Well, yeah, I don't like that I don't understand it. And so, I think one of the reasons that working with a good advisor can result in just having more dollars to spend, I think more peace of mind, that's only going to happen if you actually understand the plan that you have.
Right.
And so I think people are, they don't want to make that phone call because they're just not confident that they're going to actually get something that they understand.
Sure, because it can be overwhelming because we
Yes.
talk about your 401k strategy, your tax situation. We always talk about Social Security. A lot of people just feel intimidated. But the team at the Vincent Financial Group, they want to answer these questions. No judgments whatsoever. They want to be able to help you get to and through retirement. That's why that initial consultation, it's no cost. It's no obligation. You're not required to become a client. You can leave your wallet, leave your purse in the car. You're not going to pull out your credit card. You're just going to have a conversation and ask these questions to Matthew Decker, Aaron Vincent, and the team at the Vincent Financial Group. It starts with a phone call, 770-741-0120. Again, 770-741-0120. Ask for the retirement roadmap. You can always get more at RetireATL Radio.com. Quick break. Let's continue this discussion about annuities. Plus, I have a shocking confession from 48% of American adults. We'll get to that plus more. This is Retire ATL, and it's all powered by the Vincent Financial Group.